Hello friends, Janice Mitchell, pelvic floor physical therapist. I'm so excited and I'm honored that you've chosen to spend your time with me today to talk about pelvic floor issues and 4 tips that may help to resolve pelvic floor issues. Before we go into the tips, let's go over a little bit about how you can identify if you have a pelvic floor issue or not. So the pelvic floor is crucial for good bladder function, for good bowel function, for good sexual function. It also plays a huge role in pelvic pain and pelvic stability. The pelvic floor is part of the core, so it's crucial for core stability. If you would like to improve your performance in any of those areas, or you think you might have an issue or dysfunction, I encourage you to listen on to the rest of the video tutorial and see if you might be able to find some tips that can help you. As part of step 1, which is identify, you need to know where the muscles are, right? So here's a skeleton. This would be the head at the top, and then you follow the spine down. This is the pelvis. So you have bones on the outside of the pelvis. Here are your leg bones, your femurs or your hips that connect to the pelvis. If you imagine your pelvis kind of like a bowl, the bones are the outside of the bowl, and then at the bottom of the bowl are your pelvic floor muscles. Here is a female pelvis. So here are the bones on the outside. Here's the pubic bone in the front, and then we turn it around and we have the tailbone in the back. The pelvic floor muscles connect at the pubic bone, stretch all the way back to the tailbone. They also go side to side. There are multiple muscles that do multiple things within the pelvic floor, but it's a very powerful group of muscles that has a huge impact on quality of life. As part of step 1, let's go over 4 jobs of the pelvic floor muscles. So here in my simulated pelvis, we have the bones on the outside, the muscles at the bottom. In females, generally, we have 3 organs: the bladder, the uterus, and the rectum. And the floor needs to support these organs against gravity and abdominal pressure. So we lift from below, support. Number 2 is sphincteric. So the pelvic floor muscles wrap around the bladder outlet and the bowel outlet to keep those outlets closed at the right times, but they also need to release to allow material and fluid to pass out at the right times. Number 3 is sexual. So the pelvic floor muscles are active during sex and orgasm, and they help to provide tone and sensation. And then fourthly, we have stability. The pelvic floor muscles work with your other deep core muscles to provide stability for your spine, pelvis, and pelvic organs. If the pelvic floor muscles aren't doing their jobs, it can have a huge impact on quality of life. Step 1 is identify. It's much easier to identify muscles that you can feel. So here, your biceps you can feel, your quads you can feel. You can also feel your pelvic floor muscles, and you can feel them with your clothes on. So here is a female pelvis, but this applies to all genders, this method of finding the muscles. Pubic bone in the front, tailbone in the back, and then you have the bones side to side. You also have bones at the bottom of your pelvis called your sit bones or ischial tuberosities, and the pelvic floor muscles stretch front to back, and they also stretch side to side. So you're going to take your hands and make kind of like a C, and you're going to tuck your hands inside the ischial tuberosities, okay? So you're actually going to sit on your hands. So I want you to sway side to side, lift your bottom up, put the hands underneath, and then tuck your hands and tuck your fingers. And you're going to use your fingers to kind of press up and in on the muscles like this. Step 2 is to isolate. It's important to isolate the pelvic floor muscles for training and then integrate into activity once we're ready. So right now, your hands, you're sitting on your hands, your fingers are pressing up and in. Depending on your anatomy, you may have to press through several layers and give quite a bit of tension into your hands there. So this is what it looks like. You're pressing up and in, all right? You're not going inside any canals, you're just pressing up and in. So imagine that you're in an elevator full of people and you don't want to pass gas, okay? So you're going to squeeze your anus tight. You're going to think about that whole floor. You're lifting the floor up and a little bit forward, and you're closing those canals. Make sure that you're not holding your breath, that you're not straining, that you're not squeezing your stomach or your hips or your belly or your buttocks, okay? So we want to isolate. Tip number 3 is to improve. So the pelvic floor muscles are voluntary, which means they should do what we tell them to do. They can be trained. They should correctly contract until we want them to completely let go. Depending on your pelvic floor muscle function or dysfunction, there's a couple different paths. So one path is up training. So this means that we're trying to strengthen the muscle. We're trying to recruit more fibers. We're building the bulk. We're building the endurance. We're building the maximum voluntary contraction. Or the other path is down training. So maybe your pelvic floor muscles are overactive and we need to teach them to release and let go. So there's multiple strategies for both paths, and a pelvic floor therapist can help guide you. But that's the bottom line, basic strategy: up training, down training. Tip number 4 is to integrate. So once you're able to correctly contract until you want to completely let go, and you're doing both of those phases well, then you're ready to integrate. So we need the pelvic floor muscles to be active at the right times and be relaxed at the right time. So that requires coordination training. What good does it do if the pelvic floor muscles are doing a super good contraction, but you're lying flat on a table? That's not functional. So we need to take what we've learned in the isolation and the improvement phases and then integrate that into functional activities. So that's going to look different ways for different people, but we need the pelvic floor muscles to do the right thing at the right time in all 4 of those jobs, with supporting, with squeezing, during sex, and then with stability, core stability. So in summary, for pelvic floor issues, you have 4 tips. Number 1, identify. Number 2, isolate. Number 3, improve. And number 4, integrate. Simple, right? Probably not. There's a lot that goes into each step. It's not just easy peasy. So I encourage you, if you have questions or you're having issues, to work with a pelvic health therapist to help guide you with pelvic floor muscle training so that you can maximize your function and really achieve the quality of life that you're after. Thank you so much for joining us. If you have any questions for us, please feel free to reach out. You can direct message us, email us. We are here for you, and we love engagement and questions. You can also find a pelvic health therapist on our website, mypfm.com. Just scroll way down to the bottom where it says Find a PT, and we have links to several databases and some ideas on how to find a PT. Thank you.